Hi there, and welcome to this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent T. Today's episode was inspired by some videos I've been watching. You know, if you're on YouTube and you look up bug out bag, you're going to see an awful lot of videos. And unfortunately, most of them are put out by guys that are a little over the top, waving their arms and talking about how you need a cyclotron and a full-size excavator and maybe a chainsaw in your bug out bag. Well, maybe that works for them, but for real Earth people, I'm going to talk to Roy Huntington about our experiences both having been through emergencies and being the guys knocking on doors to tell you you need to get out because you're in an emergency. So we're going to talk about that right now. Well, hey there, Roy. Thanks for joining me yet again.
You bet. Always fun.
Well, this is kind of an auspicious moment. Our regular fans realize we didn't have a podcast last week. I've been out sick with the pneumonia, and that was after my wife already got the pneumonia and apparently gave it to me. So this is my first official act back at the helm of Guns Magazine. So if I sound a little rugged or wheezy, sorry, I'm doing the best I can. But and you've been your internet up and down and all around, and we've been a pair this week, haven't we?
I think it was you said my internet is steam powered.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it
exactly.
is. Yeah.
Well, I've had obviously a lot of time to sit around and watch video and read. And something caught my eye this week talking about bug out bags. And it was a YouTube video, and it was the usual, a full professional tactical person. And they were talking about, you need a chainsaw and a heart-lung machine and an electron microscope. And it's like, that's why people that, good Americans realize, I'm not really prepared for emergency. I need to. So let's go look at some of this stuff. And they see that and it's like, no, I'm not going to do this. So what I want to do here is kind of bring our take to this whole bug out bag fallacy, so to speak. And we'll probably not win any points from the Uber prepper, Uber tactical folks, but we're going to talk about our experiences. And let me just kind of set the overarching picture here. If folks haven't realized by now, we're both retired police officers and we've lived through different things. I know, Roy, you went through the massive Joplin tornado that essentially wiped the city off the map. And so this isn't academic stuff that we've read elsewhere, nor is it nothing's wrong with learning survival, evasion, resistance, escape in the military, but anybody with a brain would have to admit that getting dropped behind enemy lines and dealing with a gas leak in your neighborhood are two entirely different sets of situations. So we're going to talk about it from that standpoint of real Earth people, normal Earth people, and just some of the stuff that we've seen over the years. Because think about it, Roy. Between us, we've probably been responsible for tens of thousands of people leaving their home with no notice. Would you agree?
Yeah. Knock, knock, knock. Hello, you have to leave your house right now. I'll wait.
Right now. Yeah. and there's two kinds of people. There's the, okay, I'll get my stuff. And you argue with them for a second, and there's kind of two schools of thought on that. One, you're going to make them leave, which gets a little dicey in terms of the law. The other one, and the one I always use is, well, if you don't want to live, your neighbor probably does. So you've been warned. I'm out of here. And then
it's like, whoa. Yeah.
Yeah. I told the story of my guys were rescuing some people from a burning apartment, and a guy wanted to hand down his pit bull first. And they turned to me. It's like, are you kidding? I said, you burn up, get the ladder down, go to the next apartment. Then he's like, oh, okay, I'll come down. And that stupid pit bull somehow made it down from the second floor through a burning apartment. So it was fine. But anyway,
they're indestructible.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. So anyway, that's kind of our philosophy of, if you look at FEMA, they want you to have a bag, but it's kind of like, have some Band-Aids and a flashlight. And then if you go on the internet, you get the Uber preppers that, like I said, you've got to have a heart-lung machine and stuff to build wheels. And there's a middle ground. So, Roy, having been through both sides of that knock on the door, what really sticks out to you if I come to your door and say, Roy, you got to go, no discussion, what's the first thing goes through your mind?
I get in my car and leave because I have a bag in my trunk, And it's been my personal experience because I had to evacuate with a huge residential fire in San Diego where my entire neighborhood was burning down.
Mm-hmm.
Your typical San Diego, up the side of the hill, and now all the houses start. And I had probably 30 minutes at that time. And so I had already made a decision that if that had to happen, I was kissing my stuff goodbye. I mean, that's why you have homeowners insurance, you know? And so all I did then, I mean, I had a bug out bag, but that was more of a, I have to leave right now. So I went around and collected the, you know, family photos, and I threw my computer in my truck. You know, there was a few odd things. I had the luxury of a little bit of time, but it was really, how can I say this, sort of freeing to not be worried about all the stuff. Yeah. I mean, when I drove away, I knew for sure my house was going to be burned all the way to the ground, you know, and it was like, shit happens, right? but it's been my experience is that you probably are only going to sort of kind of have to handle yourself or be on your own for a couple days. I mean, in reality, we have an excellent support structure in this country, and with very rare exceptions, you know, most things have a pretty good handle on them within a day or two. And the Joplin tornado was like that. That night, I mean, literally a couple hours after the tornado hit, and 35% of the city was literally completely wiped off the map. There were farmers in here with their equipment clearing roads, and there was already people who had gone to Walmarts and were setting up stacks of water bottles on the corners, you know. And so it's like, it's not really like you're gonna have to sleep in the woods probably, you know. Yeah.
But well, I was gonna say, you know, we got to define that. Is in my experience, again, probably half or more of these things are going to be, you're going to be out for 5 hours or something like that. Like Roy said, at most you're talking 2 days, 3 days before, you know, if it's in that big of a scope. Now we're kind of getting into other things. But what I always talk to people about is, you know, how many think the world's going to collapse and we're going to have an EMP and all that? And you might get one or two people say, how many of you think that there's a good chance you personally will have to evacuate because of a gas leak, a hazmat spill, a gunman in your neighborhood, a wildfire? Everybody suddenly goes, oh, okay. And that's what we're talking about here. So let's keep it in perspective.
In San Diego, it was the really late 70s, but they had a 737 crash in a residential area. And so they went from everything was hunky-dory to 1 minute later, 50 houses were on fire, bodies were strewn around the neighborhood, you know. And so, I mean, that is truly one of those. But what I found is when you do have to do that, it's think about like you're going to take a drive across country. What do you take with you? Well, you should have some kind of little medical kit, right? You should have a coat, right? Maybe some sunscreen if you need that, your medicine, you know, maybe a good Swiss Army knife, a few bottles of water, you know, that kind of stuff, a toothbrush. And so if you think that way rather than end of the world cataclysmic collapse, you'll be prepared for 90, as you say, I mean, 98 or 99% of what could happen. And so when the knock comes on your door that says, you know, hey, there's a gunman, it's going to be a long-term hostage situation, you have to evacuate your house right now. You say, okay. And you go grab the bag that you have in the closet that's got a coat and your spare tennies and a pair of work gloves and a little, you know, first aid kit you bought at Walmart and a couple bottles of water, that kind of stuff. Maybe swing by your bathroom, pick up your meds if that's what you need, and then you're out the door. You know,
exactly.
And now when you're parked in your neighbor's house for the next 10 hours, or you're at the local YMCA for the next 10 hours, at least you'll have your stuff. You'll be comfortable, you know? So
exactly. And that's what we're trying to get folks to understand. If you want to prepare for the end of the world, good for you. As Roy and I have both said, if it gets that bad, I don't know, I'm not so much sure how much I really want to be here, but the stuff like we've talked about, those little short-term things that don't even make state news or national news, but if it affects you, it's the biggest story in town. And that's what we want people to understand, that these things literally come out of the blue. Like you said, Roy, an airplane crashing into a residential neighborhood, or, again, the look people give you when you say, this is happening, we need you to leave right now. And they just this look of shock, which I get, but then a lot of people stay with that look of shock. And then they start that, but no, I've explained what's going on. I don't have time to sit here and discuss this. You're in danger. I'm in danger. Leave. And it's, I'd say 1 in 10 are the ones that go, okay, we'll get our stuff. Most of them have to process that. So I think part of this is that mindset of it probably will happen to you sometime. So why not just set a few things aside to be ready, like you said, to be comfortable at your neighbor's house, down at the local church, the YMCA, or wherever you end up when these kind of things go on.
Well, what is the first thing most victims say when you and I have talking to them? When Beverly is sitting on the curb and she's got a bloody nose because some guy hit her in the face, they all say the same thing. I can't believe that was really happened to me. I can't believe this. So when that happens and you hear the gunshots down the road, and then the cops come in, and an out of breath, red faced cop from running is banging on your door saying, "You got to get out now, run that way."
Yeah.
Your people go, "What? Huh?"
And then they want to see, well, what's going on?
Oh yeah,
no,
it's got to sink in first. And so,
yeah.
But I think, like most things, too many people overthink all this stuff. I have visited too many people's houses when they say, because I have a reputation that I can fix stuff, right? So they'll say, "Hey, Roy, you know what? Could you look at that thing there because it's not working?" And then I will say, in the old days, I would say, "Sure, you got a flashlight?" And no. They start opening drawers in the kitchen, and then they come out with a 2D cell plastic 99-cent rail vac that doesn't work.
Exactly.
Now, of course, I don't, because since we were policemen, I just pull out my own flashlight, and take care of business. But I remember one time I was at a guy's house, and he said, "Can you fix my door?" I said, "Yeah, get me a screwdriver." And he didn't have a screwdriver, for crying out loud.
Wow.
I know. And he reached into his pocket and he said, "Well, when you have a Visa card, you don't need any of that stuff." And I said, "Well, unless,
Wow.
something like this is happening." And so I think that let's challenge somebody, which is, if you don't have anything now, the next time you're out shopping at Target or something like that, go to the backpack areas, spend $8 or $10 and buy, like a day pack. If you want to buy a little bigger pack, that's okay. It doesn't hurt anything. And then when you get home, or while you're there, buy a little first aid kit. They're like $8 or $10 or something like that. And anything else you think you might need at the store there. Maybe, those little travel, they're like little travel soaps and travel this and travel that, they're little kind of 1 or 2 uses.
Baby wipes and those kind of things. Yeah,
baby wipes, exactly. Get a shampoo, get a roadie toothbrush kit. They've got a little toothbrush and all that.
Yep.
And then when you get home, find a shirt you don't really wear a lot, a couple pairs of socks, maybe your sweatpants, a lightweight jacket of some kind that you don't really use very often, a hat. Roll up a cheap baseball cap and put it in there. And then a couple bottles of water, a plastic bottle of water will last for years, in there. And you're 90% ready,
Yep.
If you really need to, you could probably buy some energy bars. They make, like, go to the camping. Oh, that's actually another good thing, is go to the camping department, like in Academy or Walmart or someplace. They have so much cool stuff there for this kind of a thing. Yep. Matches, waterproof matches, other things like that. But it doesn't take much. For what, $50, you could probably set up a go bag that would, do you really well. But just do it.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, after I got to thinking about this, and I haven't gone through my bag in a while, so it's actually right now on our bed, all laid out. And, a couple of things occurred to me, some stuff. One thing I did laugh, I keep MREs, which, that's always the prepper thing is, you got to have MREs. And I disagree. I use them a lot for, like, when I'm going hunting, fishing, or whatever, and I'm going to be out, because what's nice, you don't have to prepare them. But in terms of, like, survival, there's better ways of doing it. But for a go bag, a bug out bag, if you want to call it that, I always keep a couple MREs, because they are, you don't even have to heat them up or anything. And food, because we always think that we're going to have to be evacuated at, 9 a.m. on a clear, beautiful morning. And you don't think, well, yeah, maybe you're filthy, you've been working on the car, you're exhausted. Maybe you just, it's been an 18-hour day, you're just going to bed and now they knock on the door. So you got to be ready for all these various situations. But anyway, having some food of some kind really takes the edge off, because they'll get you food probably at some point, but it may be quite a while. So anyway, where that whole long speech was going, my MREs in my bag, I think were packed during the Civil War. So the nice thing about MREs is if they're not damaged and they're kept at a decent temperature, like 70 in the house year round, they're probably okay. But I noticed when I was going through, probably time to send those to the MRE museum and to get some new things. So anyway, if you're dying to try an MRE, that's a good place to have them. Stick 1 or 2 of them in your bag and you got food and drink, and it'll just be a festive little party down at the local gymnasium while you're waiting for the calamity to finish.
You actually brought up a good point. I have I have 3 bags. Okay. So I have one in my trunk. It's a light one, just like a few things. And then I have 2 bigger ones that I keep downstairs in our safe room. It's a safe room because of tornadoes, right? And about, like you say, about once a year, I pull them out. You take everything out, spread them all out on the floor for 2 reasons. Is number one, I forget what's in there.
Exactly.
And a lot of times I'll do it and I'll say, oh yeah, I forgot I had one of those. It's like this last time I did it, I added a little portable camp stove that somebody gave me, with some little fuel tablets. And so you could heat the metal cup that's in there with the tea bags that I have if you really need to,
Yep.
And then I recently learned, which was such a great idea, and I have no idea why I didn't think of this before, which is just write down what's in your bag, and then put it in a top outside pocket. And so, that way you can just put and say, oh, wait, I do have that.
Yep.
Rather than ruffling through your bag trying to remember what you did or not. Now, I do something else that maybe a lot of people don't do, which is I keep a kind of an old but still good revolver and 24, 25 rounds of ammunition with an inexpensive holster, and I keep that in one of the bags.
Yep.
Chances are good I'm going to be armed anyway if it happens. But if not, grab that sucker and you've got something to protect your family, so
yeah,
something to think about.
Well, that kind of dovetails right into what I was going to say is I make lists. I'm a checklist guy, and I'm not a pilot, but I really took that to heart over the years in different things I've been involved with, especially like scuba diving, under ice diving, where your plan B is to die. So I'm a big believer. I've got a laminating machine and I make checklists. And my most frequently used one.
I do the same thing. Yeah,
exactly. Because we fly around a lot. So I've got a checklist of, my dress socks, my regular socks, and all that. And that has saved me so many times. But that's what I did today. I updated my checklist, and it's 8x10, full sheet of paper, laminated, and it stays on top of the pack. And I've got the way I do it, my system is divided into 2 scenarios, like plan A and plan B. Plan A is you got to leave right now. You've only got time to grab your bag. And on my checklist, it reminds me to grab a couple of other things like a gun, my cell phone, spare cash,
charger,
and medication.
Yeah.
And then I've got a plan B for that. Like you said, oh my gosh, I need to get out of here in the next 15, 20, 30 minutes. I've got a few minutes. And so that's some stuff like unplug the computer and check the doors and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the point being, whatever you think is necessary in any kind of situation, make you a list and put it right there. Because what I got to thinking is like medication. My wife and I both take medication. We can go without a couple of days, but life is a lot better if you don't have to. And all it is a matter of grabbing the stuff out of the medicine cabinet and going. So I want to grab that and a gun. How many times, think about this, I just did it the other day because I have this flu brain or this pneumonia brain going on. I got to the store to pick up some meds and I didn't have a gun with me, which everything went fine. But I thought, boy, that's really weird for me to leave the house without putting a gun on my waist. And that's under no stress. That's just not feeling good. In an emergency type of crisis, and they say you got to leave now. If you're not wearing your gun around your house, which I don't typically that often, there's a good chance I'm going to go, oh crap, grab this, grab that, and out the door. And then you're about 3 blocks down. You realize I don't have a gun with me. So that's on my list. And I always have one of my ready to go guns, same as you, a couple magazines and a holster. And that's on my list of stuff to grab and to get going. So, I think the big thing is with these checklists, just to wrap that up, is if you think you will remember all this stuff, you're crazier than hell in the stress of the real world. And, that's what we did for a living. It was just, your worst day was our normal work day. Okay. And we still tend to forget things because it's basic human psychology. If your stress level ramps way up, you tend to forget really important stuff. So I'm a huge believer in checklists.
It's bulletproof. That's why they have them in airplanes and every other thing that I know of. You mentioned something, and I think it's important to cover this because I didn't yet, which is I have a Ziploc baggie, and all 3 of my bags, one in the trunk and the 2 that we have in here, and each one has about $100 in cash, and it's in 1s and 5s and 10s, pretty much. I think that's what it is. Because I know some people say, oh, I put $200 bills in there. Well, that's good. But what if you need to pay some guy $10 for a peanut butter sandwich?
Yeah.
So you want a cross section of small bills. And some people say, oh, I don't want to tie up $100 in my bag. Well, if you can't afford to tie up $100 in your go bag, then I don't know. You need to reevaluate your life.
I totally agree.
But that is probably one of the more important things I've found in responding to emergencies and participating in emergencies, as it were. The overwhelming majority of people are helpful. They're quick to lend a hand. You don't have any food? Here, I'm cooking hot dogs. People are really, you need some water? Here's some water. And so you don't have to overthink this, but you do have to be prepared, prepared enough that if you had to, you could be okay on your own for 2 or 3 days.
Yep.
Now that might be sleeping in your car, on the next street over. It might be at the YMCA or in the school, in the cafeteria where they bring in some cots or something. And as you say, they'll probably have some food and they'll have some water and you'll probably have some shelter. But it sure is nice to be able to reach in your bag and pull out that candy bar if you want one, and if you get a cutty finger to get your own Band-Aid and put it on there, or dig out that paperback book that you stuffed in there in case you needed it. It's the ability to be independent is very reassuring in situations like that,
Exactly.
If it's nighttime and lights off and you can bring out your little LED flashlight and clip it on your hat and read the book that you brought, that little dose of normalcy means a lot in situations like that.
It does. And it's funny, in my bag, I keep one non-essential item. That's a deck of cards. And I've talked to many folks that have been in shelters, and you will be the king of the world if you have a deck of cards. So
that's really true.
One of those little things.
And
go ahead.
What we're thinking is if you have children, then you need to extend your thinking to that.
Yeah.
And so when you're at Target and you're buying yourself a backpack, but you have little kids, so buy them each some little kitty backpack, and in there goes a little kitty game. Buy it while you're at the store. It doesn't matter. It's probably better they don't know what's in there. So it's a big surprise if it ever has to come out. But a little kitty game, like you say, some crayons, a coloring book, a little bit of hard candy or something, because gosh, talk about the importance of have your own stuff and some normalcy. That's so critical with little kids, especially. And so,
Yep.
because this could be a pretty exciting, scary thing that's going on, but if you hand them their pink and blue, Barbie backpack, and it's like, this is my own thing, so I'm okay now, So,
Exactly. And there's one more topic I wanted to hit when we're talking about this, and I have such a love-hate relationship with this, but I do agree it's very, very important. What is the probably single most important thing in most of our lives? Your cell phone. And I had a situation 2 years ago. I was in Phoenix coming back from the SHOT Show. My buddy dropped me off. Yeah. And oh my Lord, I don't have my phone.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to lose your phone. We all have that, we misplace it and it's around here someplace. That's an irritating feeling. But being in a foreign city and not having your phone, I had my wallet, everything was good, but that sinking feeling, because my means of communication and banking and wayfinding and debit, these truly are the central focus of our lives now, for better and worse. But I will say, in an emergency, they are tremendously helpful because, as they say in military law enforcement, one of the first things you want to do is communicate. After you've made sure you're safe personally, now you need to communicate and find out what's going on, let other people know. So phones are really important. And here's my couple of tips for phones. Number one, when this happens, your phone will be on 1% of charge. So in your bag, make sure you have an extra little wall wart and a spare cord or two. And even if you don't need it, there will be other people that will kiss you on the lips, whether you want to or not, to borrow that. So I've got a little bag in my bag that's got a couple of spares, and even I've got a thing that divides it up into like 3 or 4 different charging ends. So that's pretty important. And the other thing I was going to show you, and where did it go? Okay. Oh, I know where it is, and it's not here. Is these little bricks that you power your phone with. It's about, the one I've got, it's about the size of the phone. Suppose it'll charge 3 or 4 times from dead. And I normally carry one when I'm traveling for the same reason. I don't want to be one of those people stuck, laying next to a wall waiting on my phone to charge. I just plug it in. That's a great travel tip, but have one in your bag because, like I said, it'll come at the worst moment. You won't be able to find a charger, or if you can, there's 50 other people in line for it. If you have that little brick charger, again, that will make your life much better. And my final thing is, in your wallet, take your laminator and make a little bitty card with phone numbers, because I defy you to remember or tell me the phone number of your best buddy or your grandma. You probably know your spouse's number, but beyond that, it's pretty hard to remember that. So unlike the old days, we can't write them on the wall next to the phone. So I really think it's important, just for daily living, have a little card in your wallet that has your important phone numbers.
That's really good advice. It's interesting. I always carry one of those little portable battery charger things, and I've used it actually many times in my travels. Just today, my wife and I were in town, and we get a telephone call from our daughter, and she's a little overwhelmed, and she says, "I'm lost. I'm walking home. I'm lost. I don't know where I am, and my phone's about to cut off." And it was like literally cut off, like right then. Oh. She was down to that 1%. Yeah. She was able to tell us where she was. She was looking at the street sign, and so we drove over wherever she was, and there she was sitting forlornly on the curb, And but I actually told her that very thing. As I said, "Sweetie, she has an old phone." And of course, like every kid, it has every app in human society in it, and they're all running all the time. So it runs out all the time. And I said, get you one of those little battery things. And if you tell me, and I'll give you one because I have one, and that would have solved everything. So, I'm going to one up you because we actually have an additional cell phone, and that if we're one of us or we're traveling, that one goes in a bag in another place. And because you can add a line, we're on some family plan, and it's hardly anything. Is it $15 a month or something like that? And we just use one of our old retired iPhones because you just need it to make a call. And before we did that, I bought one of those. Remember the old Nokia push button phones from, the late 90s, I guess they were. We all had them. They still sell those like at Best Buy. They're $39 or something. And you can add those to your plan. And what I carried that around for years. And what I liked about it is that you could turn it on and leave it on, and it would go for 2 weeks. I mean, do you remember those days? You could talk on your phone all week, because it wasn't using up all this power. So anyway, but that's good advice. Take a spare phone with you, or at least like what Brent says, write your phone numbers down and have that battery charger. So,
well, I didn't think about it. I do the same thing in my truck. I got one of my old phones with the appropriate charger cord, because what a lot of folks don't realize is even if it's not activated, you can still call 911 through it if you're really in need of help. And that's what I've got it there for, because it's probably dead. The battery's not been charged in 6 months, but I know it's there. And if something really bad happens, as long as I've got power in my truck or my brick with me, I can at least call 911. So it's not the ultimate answer, but it's an answer. And it's better than sitting there going, what do I do now?
Well, and and in a situation like that, if you have Wi-Fi available, because I have a couple spare phones I use here when I'm making videos. They're my second and third cameras, but they're not on my cell service, but they still have Wi-Fi. And so you can make Wi-Fi calling. You could still send text messages if you need to. So in your situation where your phone was, what happened there was, you could probably step inside the airport. They've got Wi-Fi. Break out your backup phone, jump on the Wi-Fi, text, whatever you need to do. So
that's a great idea, Roy. Because again, you don't travel as much as you used to, but when we're not like those. I've got sales buddies that literally are on the plane every week, but we're not too far behind them during certain times. And when you have to ask, where am I? What airport is this? Yeah, having that after remembering the feeling of such utter helplessness. And the way I solved my problem was a guy standing there could see I was in distress. He goes, "You want to use my phone?" And I said, "Yes, please." And then I realized I didn't know my buddy's phone number. I just always,
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing, I called my phone. He heard it ring in the door. And he grabbed it. And that's how we knew.
That was a good idea. One time when we were traveling, my wife and I were traveling, we checked into a hotel. We were tired, been on the road for days, and we went up to some room, like literally just got there, got checked in, and she said, "Oh, I forgot something in the car." And I said, "Okay, I'll get it." And so I left the room and I went down to the car and I got whatever it was, and I came back inside and I realized I didn't have the door card key. I had absolutely no idea what room we were. And I didn't have my cell phone with me, so I couldn't call her. So, and you have that momentary, I'm an idiot and I'm helpless, you know? And so I trundled over to the front desk and I said, "You don't know me." But
trust me.
I don't know what room I'm in. Could you help me, please? Fortunately, I have my wallet, so I could show my ID.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a classic case, though, of that we're so used to it. It's so a part of us that when suddenly it's excised off of us, it's just things grind to a halt. We went someplace the other day and Susie left her phone at home. And so she was like, "Hey, wait a minute." But of course, I had mine. So if we needed the cops or something, it was okay. But I will say this, though. She was very calm, and I think she was happy about not having her phone with her.
Yeah.
There's probably a lesson there, huh? All right, so get a bag. Go to Target tomorrow. Buy a cheap bag. Go around Target. Fill it up with stuff you think you could use. Because remember, if you can't use it, somebody will use it.
Exactly.
When you're there.
And, in closing, I go back to you made one statement, and that's the nugget of this entire episode, and it was, don't overthink it. There's plenty of people that want you to, and you need a $2,000 custom knife in your backpack. Yeah. No, you don't. Just get some stuff. And even if you get one or two things that you don't end up ever needing, it's fine. You'll be fine. Don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it. I probably do overcomplicate it, but that's I gain joy from wargaming this stuff out. But you don't have to. Just get some stuff to take care of yourself for 12 to 24 hours, and you'll be so far ahead of the game.
I'll tell you, having your own shampoo and your own rag that you could wipe your face with, you know, a little lotion for your hands, a toothbrush you could give yourself, you know, maybe some eye drops because it might be dusty and terrible outside. And that's the difference between wanting to kill yourself today, you know, or, okay, I can manage this, you know.
Yep.
And just remember, once a year, spread your stuff out like you did, like I do, and then throw away the old dry bottle of shampoo from last year, put a new one in, you know, and remember what you have. And maybe by then you'll think, oh, you know what? I got that pocket tool. I'll add that to this, you know.
Yep.
And,
exactly.
And it is nice. And hopefully you'll never need any of it.
Exactly. But if you do, you're ready to go. And what I'm going to try to do, and I'm going to make a public declaration, since I've got all this stuff laid out and I've got all this camera gear, I'm going to do a short video. I don't know if it'll be ready to go right after this gets published, but I am going to do that because I don't feel like I've got the only way, but I've got one way of doing it, and that might help some folks better understand. So, and I promise I won't wave my arms and get crazy and tell you how to get the heart-lung machine in there.
I'll do the same thing. You know, I'll drag my 2 bags out and then maybe take what's in one of them out and just do like a 1-minute short.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's a good idea. We'll do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Very cool. Roy, we made it. I only had to cough a couple of times with some judicious editing. Hopefully you won't even see that. Yeah. But if you do, I apologize. And your internet stayed up. Hallow freaking Luya, as they say.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And we will get together another time and talk about more great stuff here on the Guns Magazine podcast.
See you later.
Well, as always, it was great talking to Roy Huntington, and hopefully we gave you some tips, hints, and suggestions to make your own bug-out bag better or just build one to get started. Well, before I go, I would like to remind you, please check out our websites, gunsmagazine.com and americanhandgunner.com, along with americancop.com. If you go to gunsmagazine.com or American Handgunner, you can sign up for our daily newsletters, get all the news and information about the shooting world, including the Guns Magazine podcast, delivered right to your inbox. That's gunsmagazine.com, americanhandgunner.com, and americancop.com. Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. On behalf of everybody that works so hard here at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent T, reminding you yet again, now get out there and get shooting.